Okay, well, welcome everyone. Glad you could be with us here today. My name is David Bradshaw. I'm the Assistant Director of the Graduate Center, a unit of the Graduate College that focuses on professional development and interdisciplinary collaboration and networking across all of graduate education. We also serve postdocs and those that support graduate students, such as their faculty mentors and graduate advisors. I'm really excited today to have Dr. Laura Hunter facilitating our workshop on making the most out of mentoring. I want to briefly tell you a little bit about her. She may tell you a little bit more, but she is the Associate Diversity Officer at the University of Arizona. She's within the unit of initiatives for organizational inclusion. She's done lots of work on campus around inclusion, around diversity, and has facilitated several workshops for us on mentoring in the past. If you're familiar with the Diverse Faculty Discussions program, peer mentoring network, faculty from all ranks and disciplines who gather to discuss a topic related to faculty careers, she's been involved with that. She also used to do a lot of faculty development workshops. Working Graduate Center has been doing a lot to support graduate students too, and postdocs as well. So with that, I do want to let you know that if you have questions, please put them in the chat. If you prefer to share them anonymously, can direct message Sedona. You'll see her in the chat box, or you can from the chat box and direct message her. And the way we're doing this in terms of questions, I'll have 2 breakout rooms, and after the breakout room, opportunity to review the questions. And if you prefer a question, you will have an opportunity for you to mute yourself. You'll use the raise hand button. But with that, Laura, and get started. Thank you so much for being here today.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Laura. I am really excited to talk about mentoring because it's something I'm very, very passionate about. I'm also going to introduce my dog Bear, who's back there. So if you happen to hear some very loud snoring, that is him, and hopefully it's not an accurate commentary on this workshop content. But I wanted just to let you know what to expect today. We're going to be talking really quickly about the benefits of mentoring and talking about building a mentoring network. And we're going to have 2 small group discussions so that you can reflect, share what is or what has been a challenge to you in the past. And then we're going to transition into talking about mentoring best practices. So this is an evidence-based talk. So this is what the research shows makes for more effective mentoring relationships. So we'll also have some time for questions, as David said. The mentoring best practices also talks about how to find a mentor a little bit, because I know that was a question that was submitted, as well as a question that I've heard many times. So how do I even find a mentor? Mentoring is something that a lot of people give lip service to, but really don't approach it strategically. So I'm hoping that you leave here today with some skills or some strategies that can make you have more effective mentoring relationships. So the research on benefits to mentees is very, very clear that people in academia with mentors are more productive, they feel a greater sense of fit, they're more satisfied with their careers. And I love this piece of research here on the right because it's random assignment. So in this research, economics faculty applied to be in a mentoring program, and they were either randomly assigned to participate or not participate. And these researchers followed them for 5 years and found that those who had participated in the mentoring group had more publications, they were more likely to have grants that were important in their field, and they had a greater likelihood of publishing in a top-tier journal in their field, so one of the best journals in their field. So this is a really great evidence that mentoring is beneficial to your careers. It also has psychosocial benefits, so really becoming familiar with kind of the unwritten rules or norms of your department, negotiating personal and professional identities, and just feeling accepted. So not just career benefits, but these psychosocial benefits that are really important for your career satisfaction. I also want to quickly highlight that mentors benefit from mentoring relationships as well. So oftentimes people feel fearful about approaching a mentor. They're like, I don't want to have their take up too much of their time. I don't want to be a burden. But the research suggests that mentors actually benefit from this relationship as well. So it can revitalize interest in their work, expose them to fresh ideas and new perspectives. And a lot of mentors gain a great deal of personal satisfaction from developing the next generation of scholars. So I'm not going to read all of these to you. Whoops, sorry about that. I just want to mention that mentoring is what you make of it. It is up to you and your mentor to decide what you need help with or what you want mentoring around. There are so many different topics that you can discuss with your mentor. Thinking about academia, these are some examples. As a grad student, career planning will be really important. Do you want to stay in academia? Do you want to go to industry? What type of position in academia do you want? Something that was incredibly important for me when I was a graduate student was kind of how to negotiate. When you're on the job market, that is probably one of the most stressful periods of your life. And having a mentor really tell you, okay, these are what you can ask for. These are some resources that you might not be thinking about, can be incredibly important for your material success, your salary, your research funds, these sorts of things. So these are just some examples, and I'll share the slides with you afterwards, or David will actually. That way you can kind of look through these and think about, okay, what do I want the most help with for mentoring? So you might be thinking, okay, well, what is mentoring? There is no universally accepted definition of mentoring. When most people think about mentoring, they tend to think of this traditional junior-senior pairing. So having a faculty member mentor you as a graduate student or a postdoc or a junior faculty, that's what most of us think about when we think of mentoring. And those are really important mentoring relationships. But peer mentoring can be incredibly effective. And research shows that in some cases, peer mentoring is just as effective as kind of this traditional mentoring, and in some cases is even more effective. So for peer mentoring, thinking about, say, graduate students, other graduate students, it could be having a writing group for grad students. It could be for all of the graduate students who are on the job market in your college. That could be a group, a mentoring group. There's also group or team mentoring. In this case, it would be kind of one mentor working with multiple mentees at the same time. So it could be having an expert talk about how to do this specific statistical analysis and working with multiple mentees at the same time. And this can be really beneficial if there's kind of an unequal distribution of mentees and mentors. And it really helps people learn from the expert, right? It really helps kind of best utilize the talent of the experts or the mentors in that case. And even workshops can be considered a form of mentoring because it's really about the transmission of knowledge. So one really key thing that I hope you take away from this talk is that you should build a network of mentors. So this is key. So research shows that junior faculty with 2 or more mentors are more successful and are more satisfied with their career than faculty with just 1 mentor or no mentors. So having more mentors is often better. So I really hope you leave this talk today thinking about trying to build your network of mentors up. And mentoring is important across your entire career. So this isn't just something you'll need as a graduate student or a postdoc or a junior faculty member or a junior person, early career person in industry. It is something that you will have throughout your entire career course. The interim provost, Jeff Goldberg, gave a talk to a mentoring group that I ran and talked about when he was first appointing appointed as an interim provost, what he did was he sought out other provosts across the country to be his mentors. So as somebody who's in one of the most powerful positions at the institution a few years ago, he was really talking about the importance of mentoring. So why is it important to have a mentoring network? Well, first of all, you can access, mentors of the moment whose expertise is most appropriate. So if you really are struggling with, say, work-life balance, and you only have one mentor and that person works 80 hours a week in their office, they're probably not going to be the best person to approach about, trying to have some work-life balance. So having a broader array of mentors allows you to target your questions or what you need help with that particular person who has the most expertise. It also exposes you to more diverse perspectives. If, say, you're struggling with something in your research or your scholarship, having different people give you input can probably lead to the best outcome for you. You can weigh these different alternatives. Mentors can serve different functions. So it might be important to you to have a mentor that shares a really important identity characteristic or cultural characteristic. And you might have another mentor who does not share that, but is really important for your research expertise, or who's an amazing teacher who can give you some of those teaching skills. And having many mentors allows you to kind of divide the work among mentors. So you're not taking up too much of one person's time, because the labor essentially is distributed across people. And, this is a really old school understanding of mentoring, is that one mentor would basically shepherd you through each hurdle in your career. That's very old school. And what the research shows is that it's far more beneficial to have more mentors, and they can serve different functions and different roles. So when you're thinking about building your mentoring network, find mentors both within and outside of your unit, because they have different benefits. So mentors from the same unit, so your school, your department, they can provide you with very concrete advice about your projects, about the specific departmental culture, those sorts of things. But it's also important to have mentors from outside of your unit. They can give you more objective advice. They can let you know if something sounds weird that might be kind of normal in your departmental culture. And it can also be very important to have somebody outside of your unit where, you can be more comfortable voicing any sort of struggles or weaknesses or concerns, because they are not embedded in your unit. They're from the outside. So when you're thinking about building a mentoring network, it's really important to think about, both very locally, but also more broadly. And outside of your unit could be people from the University of Arizona who just are in different departments or colleges, or it could be at people from different universities altogether who perhaps you meet at a conference. So this is going to be shared with you as one of the flow-up documents, but this is a mentoring map. And this is actually a resource from the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. And in this mentoring map, you are visually in the center here, and you're thinking about the different forms of feedback or different types of mentoring relationships. And what you're doing here is thinking about, okay, who do I have that will help mentor me in my professional development? And who, internal and external to my department, do I have for professional development? Another kind of arm from this mentoring map is who holds me accountable? What are my mentors for accountability? Who are my role models? So in this exercise, you basically are trying to fill out as many of these kind of mentors as possible. And of course, you would not have all of these filled out, but this is something that you can kind of use to strategically approach potential mentors. So thinking about, okay, well, I actually don't have any peer mentors. I couldn't think of anyone. What should I do? This gives you an opportunity to reflect on where you do not have any mentors or where you do have mentors. So I did want to leave this in here as a pitch for the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity. The University of Arizona has an institutional account, and I believe we still do. I looked, the website's still up. And I included the website here, but this institutional account means that all UA faculty, students, postdocs, and staff can go and create free accounts. And these are some of the resources that they offer, such as webinars, courses, writing challenges, these sorts of things. So it can be a really helpful form of mentoring and can help you potentially build relationships with scholars from other universities. They have had accountability buddy matches before if you request that. So if you want somebody to help with your writing accountability. So this is a resource at the U of A who again can help you kind of develop your mentoring network a little bit more. So in the next section, before or after we get back from the small group discussions, I will talk a little bit about finding mentors, that sort of thing. But what I want you to do is reflect on and discuss with your small groups is how have mentors helped you in your professional and personal lives? And what challenges have you faced in mentoring relationships? This will help guide our next section where we're going to be talking about evidence-based best practices and hearing kind of what your other colleagues have utilized mentors to help their own personal or professional lives can be helpful. And we can also discuss challenges and how some of these best practices can overcome these. So you're going to get 5 minutes in your small group discussions, and then we'll come back and have a little bit of a larger group discussion at that point.
Okay, everyone. I'll be opening the rooms now. You should get a pop-up.
So now we're going to transition into talking about best practices for mentees according to research or according to experts. And I do want to share that if you're a mentor in a relationship, you can encourage your mentees to use these practices. So the very first thing that you will really want to do to get the most out of your mentoring relationships are kind of create your career goals. So some researchers advocate to use an individual development plan, and I've included 2 examples, one from postdoctoral affairs and one from the grad center. And what this individual development plan is really about, what are your career goals? What are your objectives? And thinking about your interests, your goals, clarify in your mind, what can your mentors help address? So it could be, seeking out or learning more about the different positions available to me. It could be, I don't feel like I'm on the radar of the senior faculty in my department. It could be, I really want to learn this analysis technique. I really want to get this piece published here. So whatever your goals are, this is really just kind of dumping them out on paper and really help you strategically plan your time and what you need out of the mentoring relationship. So mentoring up or managing up, I think, is hopefully also with building the mentoring map or network is hopefully what I would love for you to take from this talk, because I think what the research shows is that this is an incredibly powerful and effective technique. So in mentoring up, the mentee is primarily driving the relationship and letting the mentor know what they need. So oftentimes we kind of think the mentor will tell us what we need to do, what we should be doing, where they should be helping you. But in fact, the mentee is really the one that should be driving the relationship, and not 100% primarily, right? Because your mentor will see things that you yourself don't even know about. So the earlier example is a great point of, I didn't even know these positions were available. So yours will not be 100% driving the relationship, but you should be kind of dictating a lot of what is discussed, so a majority of it. So you can help manage the work of a mentoring relationship by planning and setting a meeting agenda, asking questions, listening, completing assigned tasks, and requesting feedback. So this is one possible structure for each meeting is to inform your mentor of the progress you've made since the last time you met, discuss 2 or 3 topics, and then plan on goals to accomplish before your next meeting. So this is really, really effective. Some of you may have had ineffective mentoring relationships where you didn't really get much out of it. You would just go there and meet with this person, and you didn't really plan ahead of time of what exactly you needed to discuss. By planning what you need to discuss, you will have much more efficient and effective mentoring relationships. And you should be asking questions and getting insight and listening actively. So making sure that you understand what your mentor is saying to you. So this works really effectively because mentors can target help. So if you feel really confident about, say, an analysis technique and your mentor was going through it piece by piece with you and you already understood it, that's not an effective use of anyone's time. Or if you're not interested in something that your mentor keeps telling you about, again, that's not the most effective or efficient use of time. So by mentoring up, the research shows that mentors can target help and mentees get exactly what they need. And the research shows that it does increase the success, efficiency, and satisfaction of mentoring for both the mentees and the mentors. So this can be really effective for making your mentor more satisfied with the relationship. And it also avoids common problems in mentoring. So common problems include failing to follow through on expectations by the mentee, an inefficient use of time. And so this really allows you to plan and to make sure that you're getting all the help you need and making most effective use of time, and then setting goals and agreed upon goals with your mentor that you will complete before the next meeting. One of the questions was really about, how do I get over feeling like a failure or approaching mentors? And this is a really effective way to do it because you have it planned, you're getting feedback periodically of what your goals should be and kind of getting feedback on what you're doing periodically. So you're not feeling like you're just letting down your mentor, you're getting feedback constantly, you're setting goals together. I mean, you're really taking on the work of, setting out what you need, and you're not leaving it up to them. You're really taking a lot of the burden of deciding what should be mentoring topics away from the mentor, and you're taking them on yourself. You're taking a really active role in the relationship. So how do you find a good fit? So this is always a struggle, and I will say that there's never necessarily like one approach that you should use. But it's really important that you already have your goals set, because when you have your goals and you know what you want out of a mentoring relationship, this will help you decide whether a person is a good fit or not. As a graduate student, one of the most effective ways to find good mentors is to ask other graduate students who their mentors are and their experiences with them. They might say, oh, this person's really great for this aspect, or this person's not so good. It takes them like 6 months to respond to an email. So those can be really, really important sources of information. One thing that you can do is initiate contact and explicitly say what you're looking for. That will allow them to say whether they would be a good fit or not. So usually you would never email somebody and say, I'm looking for a mentor, will you be my mentor? That's such a really broad understanding. And again, there's no universal definition of mentoring. So that's probably not the best approach to take. Instead, explicitly say what you're looking for. So I'm working on this project and I know that you have experience in this area. Would you be willing to read my proposal and provide feedback on it? That is very specific. I'm looking to meet once a month to get feedback on this course that I'm designing. Again, meeting once per month, you're giving the potential mentor an idea of what is expected out of them. being on my master's thesis or being my dissertation advisor, these sorts of things. Those are very specific and they're kind of more quantifiable. And again, it will help determine whether this person is a good fit for you. So it could be that they might not be a good fit because they already have a lot of graduate students or they already have a lot of mentees. They might be able to provide you somebody who would be a good fit. So you could also think about taking the snowball approach. So if you do have a really great mentor, you could say, you know, I'm also looking for a mentor who shares this particular identity, or I'm going to be a new parent. I'm looking for somebody who has been a parent as a graduate student. Do you have somebody that you could recommend to me that I could approach? These sorts of things. So using that snowball approach is really important. Again, I really think that if you initiate contact and not just say that you're looking for a mentor, but say explicitly what you are looking for will be a pretty effective way. And again, I know a lot of graduate students feel like they are nervous to approach mentors, but as the research shows, mentors get stuff out of this relationship. It's not just a one-way relationship. They're exposed to fresh ideas, these sorts of things. So a lot of mentors love to mentor. So I would say don't be afraid to at least initiate contact and ask. At the same time, not everyone loves to be a mentor, so I wouldn't take it personally if somebody says, oh, I'm like way too busy, or I can't at this time, or you receive no response. Unfortunately, that is the reality of the situation as well. But I would say a vast majority of people do love the mentoring relationship aspect of their careers. So research shows that one of the most important things you can do when you do find a mentor is set clear expectations from the beginning. So how often are we going to meet? What type of meeting are we going to have? Obviously right now it's basically all going to be Zoom or phone or email, not face-to-face, but some of you who are in maybe more critical roles are meeting face-to-face. And thinking about the responsibilities and roles. So as a mentor or a mentee, you could say, I will send an agenda a day in advance, and you can add anything you want as a mentor, but this will be my responsibility. The mentor might say, okay, well, I will read your proposal once a semester and give you feedback. These are kind of the responsibilities and roles. And you can look some examples up online about responsibilities and roles to give you some ideas, but if you have these set from the beginning, it can be really important. Confidentiality is incredibly important to establish. You don't want to assume that it's confidential without having that explicitly stated, because you don't want to talk about your vulnerabilities or something you're struggling with and then that get to other people. So ask if what you say is confidential. There are mandatory reporting issues on campus. So if you disclose that you are being, say, sexually harassed, there are mandatory reporting issues with that, but most things do not fall under mandatory reporting. So if you have an issue that you're worried about, you can look up mandatory reporting. Otherwise, see if what you say is going to be confidential or not. And also ask about typical turnaround time for feedback. If you are going to ask your mentor to, say, read and provide feedback on articles, proposals, grants, these sorts of things, you need to know as a mentee when you should be sure to get them to your mentor in time for you to be able to submit when you're hoping to submit. So now I want to transition back to a small group discussion on what the strategies you've used to make your mentoring relationships more successful. So again, I'll give you 5 minutes and we can share out some strategies that you've made or you've used to make your mentoring relationships more successful. So again, you'll get 5 minutes and small breakouts.
You're good to go, Laura.
Okay, thank you. So I'm hoping some of you might be willing to share out what has made your mentoring relationships more successful.
I'll share. I find that it's very, very important to maintain communication with your mentors, your different mentors, even if it's not an issue that they may be particularly in need of knowing, depending on their focus and the reason I have them as a mentor, because I want them all to know what I'm doing and what I'm actively involved in.
That's really a great point. And that's also something that mentors are worried when they don't hear from you for a really long time, right? They're like, where is this person? What have they been up to? So keeping them in your communication loop is incredibly important. Thank you. Other strategies. Anyone else would like to share?
Yeah, I can share.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is maybe it's a little counterintuitive, but it's worked really well for me, is having the informal aspects of a relationship. So especially for peer mentoring, like in industry or even in classes or for research, just having some time to talk through your problems with someone and say, hey, I'm running into this issue. You may not even have something you're asking from them, but almost just having a sounding board. Hey, kind of hear me out. What do you think about this? And together, I really like the collaborative part of the interaction and how you can come to solutions together or just ideas on things you could try. So I've really enjoyed that part of mentoring or just communicative relationships in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really important to have mentors that you trust, that you can have kind of these informal side conversations. So not everything needs to be planned or anything like that, but having a sounding board is really, really important. So hopefully at least, when you're thinking about your mentoring map, at least one or two of your mentors can be your sounding board. All right, maybe one more, if one more person wants to share.
Yeah, I can go.
Sure.
So for me, in my experience being a mentor, I've kind of, let the mentee set the expectation on when they want to be in communication with me, whether it's meeting in person or a phone call, or, or in this case, where the position we're now, doing like a Zoom meeting, only because they're the ones that kind of want the guidance and kind of leave it up to them to set those expectations. But then once they set those expectations, I know that I have to be readily available to help guide them through whatever it is they want to be guided through, whether it's just having a simple conversation, talking about grad school, academic, non-academic, whatever it is. And if I give them, I found when I've given them that responsibility, they have a tendency to be more willing to want to be mentored by me.
Wonderful. That's a great best practice. And I will say, when you have those expectations outlined from the beginning, they can really help people feel empowered to contact you. So if you know that you're going to be checking in every 2 weeks, that's when you are supposed to be in contact. So as graduate students, you won't feel like, oh gosh, I might be bothering this really busy person or my mentor, because you already have it defined as a kind of collaborative decision about how often you will be meeting. So it's very powerful and very important to set those expectations. And I also just want to note, given kind of the time that we're living in and the impact of the pandemic and racial inequities and all of these sorts of things are creating a lot of trauma for our students, for ourselves, for our friends and colleagues. So I think even though we have these expectations, being very understanding right now is definitely needed. So I just want to end on a couple of other points, and then we can open up to other questions. So I just want to mention the importance of mentoring for students from underrepresented or historically underrepresented groups. The research shows that people from underrepresented groups, such as scholars of color or women in STEM or disabled students, have less access to mentors. They tend to have fewer mentors and they face more isolation, and they might not be getting the informal mentoring that a lot of us are able to get in our informal networks. And mentors may gravitate towards themselves, towards people who remind them of themselves. And people who are from kind of privileged backgrounds may be hesitant to mentor people from underrepresented backgrounds because they feel like they lack experience, or they feel that it's really important to share cultural identities and would like that student to be able to find a mentor that shares the identity. So in a nutshell, the research shows that people from underrepresented groups in academia tend to place higher importance and value on mentoring, but they're less likely to actually receive mentoring. And mentoring is really important for addressing inequities that occur in academia. Implicit bias or microaggressions by these sorts of characteristics. And mentoring is really important to help cope and to help challenge some of these inequities. People from majority or privileged positions can learn about the experience and help better advocate for groups who are underrepresented if they're having these really important mentoring relationships. So the research shows that if you're mentoring essentially across difference, it's really important to have candid conversations about those differences. So if you're a white person mentoring a person of color, having a candid conversation about race in your department, in the discipline, the national events can really help establish trust and improve the mentoring relationship. And this is what, according to the research, shows. We will be having a talk in the Grad Center about implicit bias or unconscious bias in academia and kind of strategies to address these. But I did want to note the importance of identity in mentoring relationships. So I'm going to open it up now to any sorts of questions or related points or comments. I'm going to go ahead and stop share. But if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat bar, or you can unmute yourself. I'm also going to share a link right now. This is a mentoring resources page that I created that has a lot of different research or evidence-based strategies. If you're designing a mentoring program, it has some best practices for kind of department heads or program coordinators on that end, versus if you're just a mentor and you want to think a little bit more deeply about mentoring best practices, or thinking about kind of how race or gender or other identity factors can influence the mentoring relationship. So are there questions or comments or reactions people would like to share? Or does anyone else have strategies that they've used that have been very helpful in creating more successful mentoring relationships? You're welcome to share those as well.
I had a question. I wanted to ask how to so like you mentioned, we have so many different mentors in our lives in different ways, personal, professional. How, I guess I have a challenge managing all of those different relationships. Like how often do maybe the relationship has completed, or I've left that university or something, but how often should you keep in touch with them? How do you kind of keep all of those webs of connections going? I kind of struggle with that. I wanted to get your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably a common struggle that many people face. And I would say I don't really have any clear-cut answers. I think maintaining those relationships are really important, because sometimes it's those mentors, even those that you haven't been in contact with a while, who will send you, say, an important job opportunity or important connection, those sorts of things. So I would say in general, even if it's just an email of here are things that recently happened, or hey, look, I took this new position. I wanted to let you know. How are you doing? I would say probably at least every 6 months would probably be ideal, but that's just my personal thought, and that's not in any way based in the research or anything like that. So other people might have other opinions, but I will just say that that's incredibly important to keep that thread alive. And again, even if it's just a simple email of, this is new. I hope you're doing well. Feel free to reach out and let me know how you're doing too. And I think if you go to professional conferences, those are a really great way to reconnect. You could reach out and see if your colleague, your mentor is going, and see if you can even just sit down for a cup of coffee or something like that. Other people might have different thoughts though, if they want to chime in.
We do have a question in the chat. An attendee asks if you have any resources for professional development of mentors, and what are the best ways to improve the skills as a mentor?
Mm-hmm. So in that diversity.arizona.edu mentoring resources, there is a short kind of toolkit for mentors that provides some kind of best practices for mentors. So for mentees, the most important characteristics for a mentor is simply being open and being available. So being very explicit with your availability, that you're there for them, that they won't feel like a burden if they have a challenge, can be really, really helpful for helping develop that characteristic. And I would say that it's really important for you as a mentor to ask for feedback. So what am I doing that is helping you most? Is there something that you would like to change about our relationship? Oftentimes the mentee may not feel comfortable giving you that feedback, but we all want different things. We all have different expectations. So inviting that feedback can be really powerful for establishing trust and for making sure that the mentee is getting exactly what they want out of the mentoring relationship.
So I think we have time for probably one more question, and then we'll close. So folks, if you'd like to put a question in the chat, feel free, or you can use the raise hand function to let us know you'd like to unmute yourself.
Hi. Hi, Laura. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. So, as you said something in the last statement that was very important. Like you talked about underrepresented students and how they have difficulties and challenges, right? Getting mentors. So, I actually fall in that group. I'm actually from West Africa, and I completed my master's degree. But it's very true what you said, because it's very hard to connect, like to find people who are just there, like in that, in your race, or who are doing good at that level and willing to help you. So, how do you think we could overcome some of those barriers, or how could we meet up with people like that, and what kind of advice can we give, like current students and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. So sometimes it's helpful to look for kind of larger professional organizations. So not necessarily just trying to connect with people from the University of Arizona, but if there are professional organizations or sub kind of organizations for your discipline, those can be a really helpful way to connect. Oftentimes at conferences, that's also a good way to connect. And there are sometimes like events for, say, students of color or women in STEM, those sorts of kind of sub-events. So I would look for those at conferences, look for professional organizations that share your identity, or again, trying using this snowball approach. So if you find somebody that you really connect with, ask them who their great mentors have been, if they would be willing to introduce you. or if they would just be willing to provide you some contacts for you to introduce yourself. Those are some helpful ways that can be successful, and really looking outside of your university or your department as well, I think can be really helpful.
Thank you.
Well, or go ahead, Laura.
I
Sorry.
was just going to say thank you all for joining me today. And again, you'll get the slides to follow up, as well as the mentoring map. And my email is included in the slides. So if you have any follow-up questions, or if you want to chat about mentoring, you're welcome to reach out to me.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for your time today. We know you're staying really busy with the work you're doing in IOI, and we really appreciate the time and effort you've put into this. For those of you still on the line, please feel free to share your feedback with us. We'll be sending all the materials out via email either today or early next week. And hopefully we'll be able to put the recording up as well, assuming all went well. And with that, we hope you have a great weekend and stay safe, bear down and mask up. So see you later, folks.
Bye. Thank you all.